We are being recorded.
So watch what you say. We don't want to have any rude remarks or, we can say whatever we want to before that.
Caleb.
No hot mic scandals around here.
Caleb,
Does that,
He's
the
gone.
cameras come on at the same time?
he's out of town.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
3 minutes.
You good? After going to the doctor, the routine stuff, get on the scale and take blood pressure and rest. Jumped on that scale and it said 252. Whoa. And I said, no, your scale was way wrong. I said, I just got on mine this morning and it's not
Yeah.
what I want. It was like 146. I must have that in close.
There's fewer
I
now.
don't think so. I'll put it down right now. She said, I don't think so. That's when, after you and I finished up.
Oh, but I'm telling myself and I'm enjoying them right now. So.
I said, I think that I'm doing the right thing to everyone else. I said,
Someone told you I've got something for you.
Yeah.
and, this is getting ridiculous. She said, yeah, I noticed it. Slowly creep up. He said, let me set you up with a nutrition. And since seeing her dropped about 5 pounds in about 6 days.
Wow. So is it a different food or different in procedure or?
It is just watching portions and trying to do a balance.
Postpone it until after that.
Sure.
The municipal league representing the city.
Tells me how many calories I'm supposed to have a day. I said, I'm on the freaking phone.
Yeah,
It's just there to keep track on this.
it was passed up to me by somebody. It wasn't, it wasn't Mr. Grummer.
I'm supposed to drink 4 of those a day. And he said, okay, I'm going to have at least 3 servings of some sort of fruit. And watch the balance of the carbs. You don't have to cut it all out. But it's just a matter of watching.
You don't have a
it
big
gets down
roll
to
with every
portions.
meal.
Well, no, that's not good. And, of course, they want
He's got 10 seconds.
you to track your exercise.
I'll gavel him back to his seat.
Which I didn't realize it, but that stuff in the pocket is pedometer. Crap.
I got one to count my steps.
Call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Maumelle Planning Commission. Mr. Neri, announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Ramsey is on a very well-deserved vacation with his family. And the mayor is somewhere with the U.S. Air Force this evening. I'm not exactly sure, but he won't be in attendance with us. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. We'll now move on to approval of the minutes. There was no meeting for June. You've all been provided copies of the meetings for the May 24th. Do we have any comments or corrections to be made?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Minutes are approved. I have no public comments on non-agenda items, so we'll move on to open the public hearing. Having no old business, we'll move on to new business. Item number 1, Mr. Neri, staff comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for a conditional use permit to locate a church in a C2 zoning district. Specifically, this is Christian Life Church asking to locate, or in their case, relocate from Maumelle Corners to 1503 Club Manor in the location that formerly was the print shop. Some background: 2 years ago, in 2016, Christian Life Church appeared before you and requested a conditional use permit to locate in Maumelle Corners. They were successful in that request from you and also to the City Council. With the exception of one zoning district, a church is a conditional use in any other zoning district in the city, hence their request tonight. Mr. Don Duran and Pastor Kidder are in the audience. If you have any questions for them, you can see the staff analysis. They've been a good neighbor while they were at Maumelle Corners, And they're taking a vested interest in the community, I feel, and they're not leasing this space. They're actually purchasing it. They're going to occupy actually a small portion of it and renovate the rest for further lease spaces to attract maybe some commercial and retail to this space after all. There was 10 public comments, 9 in favor, 1 opposed. The biggest hurdle they had to overcome was the fire code load changed to assembly in this building when they wanted to locate their church there. Therefore, there was a different set of codes to be met for both John Payne, the fire marshal, Jim Morley, head of permitting. They had to have architectural plans created by a licensed architect for both Jim and John to review. Those plans were delivered to me today. I then delivered them to Jim Morley to further pass to Chief Payne. One good thing about this is that Jim and John have 11 days from today to review those plans thoroughly before this passes on to the City Council. And I have no doubt in talking to Chief Payne and to Mr. Morley that that will be done. Therefore, staff is going to recommend for a due pass recommendation of the Maumelle City Council contingent upon a favorable review of the architectural plans by Chief John Payne and Mr. Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Can you tell me the reasoning behind the one call that was opposed to this?
Yes, it was in an email that the mayor received, and I think some of you all on the commission received it as well. It was actually forwarded to me by the mayor. The individual felt that we shouldn't give up space for commercial and retail tax revenue in this case. But in effect, some of this is still going to be open to attract some commercial or retail clients. I will tell you that the print shop that was formerly there, they paid their last business license fee in 2014. So therefore, it had been vacant for going on 5 years with no commercial hits. And I believe the realtor who listed that, Mr. Bingman's in the audience tonight. I think he can verify that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. Do we have any commissioner questions of staff or of the applicant?
Mr. Mary, Chief Payne's comments, I mean, is that along the lines of sprinkling and?
That's involved. There's a certain point in code where sprinkling no longer becomes necessary. It also has to do with exits, emergency exits, and several other things in the fire code that I'm not familiar with.
Okay, but that's all being addressed or has been addressed?
That's being addressed now. The plans were just delivered today. In talking to Chief Payne, a thorough review of those plans could probably take 3 days. If he was very rushed and it was an emergency and he didn't have a big load at the fire department, maybe 1 long day's worth. But they both have plenty of time to do a thorough review.
I will say, Mr. Chairman, that I did receive a copy of that email that Mary was talking about. I read it, and I understand where the individual is coming from.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Do we have any further comments or questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we pass on with a due pass recommendation to the City Council, request for conditional use permit for located church in C2, contingent upon a favorable approval by building code and fire review of the plans and any additional staff comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, due pass recommendation will issue. Moving on to item number 2, Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the preliminary plat for Carnahan Village to be followed by the preliminary development plan for Carnahan Village. I'm sure you all remember Mr. Brock. He recently had this property rezoned somewhat over 13 acres to accommodate single-family detached housing. After 3 staff reviews, the comments are down to a housekeeping nature. The most important thing is the satisfaction of the city engineer's comments, Mr. Rahman. And I just heard from him today. Mr. Rahman hasn't had these plans very long. And we'd had a council city engineers meeting this week on Wednesday, so he's just beginning. As far as drainage calcs and number crunching, that hasn't transpired yet. That always happens in the construction phase. Of course, all of you all know that you don't move forward unless you satisfy the city engineer. So therefore, on the preliminary plat, I'm going to recommend for a contingent approval, contingent upon satisfaction of all staff comments and any further commissioner comments. I might also add that Chief Payne from the fire department, his fire marshal comments have been satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Neri. And I have a public comment card from Mr. Scott Grummer of 16 Ozark Drive. Can you please approach? And please state your name and address for the record, please.
Scott Grummer, 16 Ozark Drive, and thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. And I don't want to worry anybody. I heard under the breath that, oh, there's a comment, so that's not good. But I'm not here to cause trouble or conflict. I just had a few questions and just a few things. I had questions about the developer on the project. Could I ask those to get those answered before I comment, or is that? My main question is, what's the estimated square footage on each individual property if he already has this planned out, and then what is estimated sales price? Or I don't know if that's a question that I can ask or not.
I'm not sure on the procedural points of that, but we'll make sure to ask the applicant that. When you say square footage, are you referring to the lot sizes or the proposed home size?
To the proposed home size,
It's 1,800.
1,800.
Is what was discussed in the subcommittee meeting.
Okay, all right. So, and is there a time limit? I just want to make sure I don't talk too long or talk too short.
3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. Basically, I fully agree with the zoning change in this land use as far as what's been decided there. I think the use of the land has not been utilized because nobody's been willing to go there, so I think that's a great decision. On the other factor, when you look at the land use and the zoning for, is it the PDR for residential, but the SUR, correct? Special use residential, which is how the land use has been changed? The
PRD.
PRD, right. On the land use side, it calls for a variety of housing types. It's not R1, but you can do R1, R2, or R3. And I would just challenge the developer versus doing just standard suburban style housing in an area that's so close to the town center. And I realize I'm kind of late to the punch because this has already been designed out and developed out, and there's been a tremendous amount of investment in engineering and everything. But at the end of the day, when you look at the demographics that are needing to look at new housing, there's a certain demographic that needs a little bit more affordability than some of the single-family housing that's being developed in this city. And if you don't allow different varying types of housing, as well as a little bit more density, then you're challenging that affordability to hit that young professional or maybe even that aging in place who wants to move down from the larger house to the smaller house. So with that, I would challenge that even though the density is around 5 3/4 units per acre, I mean, I've myself designed projects that have been about single-family detached 12 units per acre. And if you do that in this situation, you're looking at 123 units versus 59. And that's over twice than what you have. And to be able to support the town center and the future growth of that, I think some of the challenges the city has is the fact that we're a bedroom community. Everybody commutes out, and there's nothing there to support the needs of that town center. So to grow that center part, you're going to have to bring bodies in. So if you put a single-family unit in an urbanized, more urban area, I think it's not necessarily what I would consider correct for that type of zoning area. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Have any commissioner questions of the staff or of the applicant?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to the applicant's representative. we have a new engineer.
Would you both please state your name and address for the record, please?
Daryl Brock, Conway, Arkansas,
Mr.
18
Brock,
South
you
Shore.
currently have a subdivision under construction, right?
Yes,
And it's down at the end of Country Club Parkway?
yes,
What size are those houses?
1,800.
So that's basically going to be the same footprint that you're going to try at this new location?
Exactly.
Have you seen the city engineer's comments?
No.
Okay, there is one little change, and I'm sure that this will get handled as it goes along. Just want to make you aware that he does have some questions about some of your detention. We've been talking about it for a little bit, so that will need to be satisfied before, you go too much further.
Mr. Holloway has those comments.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah, we got them late in the day today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Eric just left town, so they'll get addressed.
Have you ever built any zero lot lines or apartments?
No.
They scare you?
What I'm finding in the market in the housing has changed.
Yeah, the entry level, I guess, is kind of,
Entry-level homes are just about non-existent because the land cost is so much. So we're having to step up. 1,800 is about as small as you can build and make a profit. And
that's all I got of Mr. Brock.
Mr. Brock, consistent with our public commenter's question, is the average selling price of this new development, do you expect that to be in line with the subdivision you're working on Country Club?
correct.
Have any further commissioner questions or comments?
Yeah, I'd like to meet the new engineer.
Jess Griffin. I'm working with Eric now over at Holloway, and I'm here to follow all the rules and do everything y'all tell me to do. So we'll get together and work together real well.
Well
Well,
said.
Mr. Griffin, I see Mr. Holloway's got you off to a great start.
I've just given my condolences. Before.
Actually, I worked with Mike for about 2 months before he became mayor over here. Or
Millburger Farm?
I was at Crafton Tall when I first started.
I can't say anything against that. So if I can't say something against Eric. And hopefully you understand it's tongue in cheek that I'm doing that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
This is
Commissioner
of staff. When we rezone from into PRD, of course, we can condition it. I think that we have the right to put any conditions, but I'm not aware of us when a zoning change is made for us to condition that zone with any specific build as long as it is a permitted use in the PRD.
We've never done that in the 16 years I've been here.
And that would have to be the case if Scott.
That's the,
Scott's- if- I don't know of another avenue
that's,
that could take other than a dictated use of approval.
which is somewhat the beauty of a planned unit development, and in this case, a planned residential district, in that you have to submit the development plan. Once that development plan and what's on it is read by the city council by resolution, it can't be anything else. It's that and that only. And small changes will bring that all the way back through you all and to the council
Which we
again.
had.
Yeah, just ask the Sonic,
Yeah. And
so.
the subdivision there on the left that went town style and then went back and went single family as well.
Correct.
That had a denser development and then ended up changing to go back to single family, which
Correct.
seemed to be have taken off. So not to discount Scott's comments. So we don't really have a methodology unless we dictate to the applicant that we want you to build zero lot line, 1,100 square foot or 10,000. There's not a means for us to do that other than dictating that to him in the use.
No, you'd have to, in essence, say no to it. So,
Thank you.
I mean, what you getting at, is there something that we could do on this commission to allow something other than what's
I was just-
regulation?
I was just having the planning director clarifying our, I guess, legal position if we were to, I guess it would be request that the applicant would not have to do it.
no,
per se.
No,
So we could vote it down and he could still move it to city council as well, too.
that's correct.
An appeal. Gotcha.
Any further questions or comments?
I do have one question. I'm assuming, Director Neri, that you want to rescind your comments on your submission because you've said in there under your review recommending to resubmit.
Yes, I didn't have the full set of plans until late in the afternoon today for a third review.
I just want to make sure we get that in the record because
Well-
what's here.
Yeah, but my recommendation, Commissioner Fisher, is for contingent approval,
Well, I understand,
contingent upon the staff comments, not a resubmission.
but you said resubmission. That's all. I'm
But that's
trying
not
to
my
clarify.
recommendation.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
I think, ma'am, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the intent of the engineering comment to the applicant is that you're going to have to require some additional easement for that drainage and outlet structure to the utility easement drainage.
Yeah, we wanted to clarify that is because we only need an easement if we're gonna use the other property, right? If we're gonna get on the other person's property. That pipe is stubbed out on our property and there's a head wall on our property, so all we're gonna do is connect to that pipe. And on our property, we actually have a detention easement at that detention pond. Now, we don't own the other property, so you can ask the other property to.
No, I don't take the comment that way.
There's nothing you can do about the easement.
I take that, is the entire, you're saying the entire property is going to be designated as a drainage and utility easement? Correct, that's what's shown.
He's saying you need to see, like, on the other side, you got an easement in that drainage area. And if we're gonna use that, or we're gonna build drainage structures in that easement, well, then we either have to have an easement there, or we will have to purchase it. But there's a structure that's stubbed out on our property, a drainage structure. It's right there close to the line, but it's actually on our property, the head wall is. And so all we're gonna do is,
You're currently showing and approving on somebody else's property.
no, it's not someone else's property.
Whose is it? The 30-foot drainage, the property boundary is not shown. So the pipe that you're showing out of the detention pond comes over the property line to the north.
Right.
And I think that's what his comment is referencing.
He's saying detention pond 1 right here. And he's talking about right here, this drainage structure. Up here is actually an easement shown.
Yeah, but you have the same is shown, the same as for, I was looking at the one to the north.
Detention pond 2.
And that, I think that's what it's, I was just making you aware. I'm not here to debate it with you. My comment to you is that I just wanted you to be aware of what I think the city, he's not here to represent himself, but what I think his intent is. And his intent is that you're showing improvements on property of which you don't own.
Of detention pond 2,
Come here. This right here is not on your property. This right here is not on your property. And what he's saying is that you have to have some type of agreement in place to be able to construct that and provide drainage to that property. That's how I take his comment. And I was just making the applicant aware of that.
that's a drainage.
Because he
easement.
said, of which you don't own.
We can pull this structure back.
You can do whatever it takes to satisfy his comments.
Right.
And that is the bottom line. The project doesn't move on any further till he's satisfied.
I'm not the city, I'm not the city engineer.
That's what I'm trying to ask.
I'm not the city engineer. I was just making aware of the applicant and said he not read the comments.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of important.
What I saw was about detention pond 1.
You have the same thing in both of them, for that matter. In my opinion, the situation exists for both.
I don't know. I will check with him. I think it's not gonna be an issue. In this one area, there is an easement there in place, so I don't think there'll be an issue there either, so. But I'll check with Mazan and we'll get everything right. Like I say, I'm gonna do what y'all tell me to do.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments?
The preliminary plat stays with us.
Stays with you.
Hearing no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we accept the proposed preliminary plat for Carnahan Village, Brock Custom Homes, contingent on commissioner comments, staff comments, and especially adhering to the city engineer's comments on the drainage issues.
And as well as the fire marshal.
Oh, and also he's staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3, Mr. Neri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the preliminary development plan. Staff is going to recommend for a do-pass recommendation of the Maumelle City Council, contingent upon satisfaction of all staff comments and any further commissioner comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Neri. Do we have any questions or comments of staff? Any questions or comments of the applicant? Any other questions or comments altogether? I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we pass on to the city council with a do-pass request for the proposed preliminary development plan for Carnahan Village, subject to staff, city engineer, and commissioner comments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. I'll now close the public hearing. We'll move on to City Council liaison reports. June 4th was Commissioner Ramsey, and he's not here. Did anybody else attend that meeting and can give a report?
I've slept since then.
All right, we will defer to the video posted on the city's website. June 16th, Commissioner Todd.
Yeah, I did not attend, but I did view. There were 2 items that actually, it was a second reading of the rezoning and land use for this particular property we just seen the preliminary and development plan on. And then 1 item of interest, we had a second reading of ordinance 956, which will allow your sewer bill to be billed through your water. And so there will be no more separate billing on that once that passes through and gets started, which apparently will allow us to have a bigger enforcement arm for people that don't pay their waste garbage disposal fees, because they can't have water if they don't pay their sanitation.
Thank you, Commissioner Todd. July 2nd, Commissioner Johnson.
The third reading of the ordinance that John was mentioning, was written to half a penny, if I remember right, but the whole procedure and the ordinance is to, we bill on the quarters now, and you're gonna go to a monthly, so the ordinance was just to clean up, to transition that over to CAW's third party who handles that for them. Then the amendment to the land use plan, and the master zoning map, which was related to the property on the preliminary plat and development plan this evening on the 13 acres that Baptist currently owns for Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Moving on to July 16th, Commissioner Green.
Well, there was no actually any planning commission information there, but I will give you a highlight of, they did ordinance 959, which had about the bonds, and they did approve those, and one of the things that came out was Maumelle was rated as AA negative on the bonds, which is really good for all the CPAs or whatever that's in the house and know what that means. There were 2 resolutions. One was to get rid of the red car. I don't know if y'all ever heard them talk about the red car. But they got rid of the red car. And then one was a resolution to straighten out a typo on the resolution, was 2018-17, and they had to do a new resolution to correct that typo. That was it. Short meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. City Council liaison for August 6th, that's you, Commissioner Andrews, and August 20, to you, Commissioner Fisher. Missionary, anything further?
One other thing, Mr. Chairman, for any of you all who are interested, on Tuesday, August 28th, if you would like to come to the Maumelle Community Center, to the South Room, I would suggest if you come that you probably bring at least boots and probably preferably waders. And you can stomp around in the White Oak Bayou Basin with me and 20 grad students from Arkansas Tech and their professor. So feel free to join us.
Did you say August 28th?
That's correct.
That brings snake chaps.
We'll save you a place, Commissioner Johnson.
Poor students.
What time does that kick off?
Noon.
In the heat of the day.
Is that some of those other duties as assigned?
Unfortunately, yes.
All right, I will entertain
I
a
make a
motion.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned. Just because you have an existing utility easement